Pastor Bobby Leonard's recent sermon, where he suggested that rape suspects should be acquitted if their victims wore shorts, has sparked intense backlash and condemnation. Despite the outcry, his subsequent apology, displayed on a sign outside the church, has been met with skepticism. The sign, bearing a simple message of regret, falls short of addressing the deeper issues raised by Leonard's remarks. Critics argue that such a passive response fails to acknowledge the gravity of the situation and the need for meaningful accountability. As protests continue and voices demand more than mere words, Leonard's apology via signage serves as a stark reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and recognition of survivors' experiences. This story is from the Charlotte Observer by Joe Marusak on February 26, 24. And this is just so infuriating. So, Infidel, let's hear from you first.
I was raised in a sect where pants were a sin for women, so forget shorts. This idea of she was asking for it is something, unfortunately, not new at all. I will say, though, that one thing that really struck me beyond absurd was because a man's a man. What kind of excuse is that? What does that say about Pastor Bobby Leonard? I've mentioned before that we can tell a pastor's porn preferences by what they rail against. Well, I have to wonder what's going on inside of Pastor Bobby Leonard's mind that makes him think that sexual assault is something that can so easily be excused, and not only excused, but essentially dismissed as not sexual assault, because he didn't just say that they were asking for it, but that he would vote to acquit them. To me, that's almost like saying I'll hold somebody's arms down because they were wearing shorts. It's just a complete level of dishonesty but then again, maybe not dishonest at all. Because really, this is just what we call purity culture now, but it's without all the polish and spit and the right words and the guise of normalcy that we see allotted to purity culture so often. Unfortunately, though, I will say that, as you mentioned, the apology on the billboard, that's a pretty weak way to apologize. You would think that if you really realize you said something wrong, you would do a little better than have somebody else go out and put something up on a billboard. But this isn't new. This is just another example of what we're seeing as an additional attack on women's rights and women's right to control their own body. Because after all, men will be men. A man's a man. And with that, I have a lot more to say, and none of it very good, at least not for Pastor Bobby Leonard. So I think it's time that I go ahead and say, Kelly, what did you think about this?
Yeah, a man's a man, and I guess it's a woman's a woman, so it's okay to assault them because they're wearing shorts because, a woman's a woman, right? What kind of excuse is that? That's ridiculous. And you know what I hear when I hear this guy, when I hear Pastor Leonard say this, what I hear is that I would acquit this guy because this is something I would do. This is something that I think I would be guilty of. When I see women with tight shorts, that's what I want to do to them. So why should that be a bad thing? I'm doing it. I'm a pastor. Why is that a bad thing? And that's what really I think bothered me the most about this, because that's kind of the way I heard this weighing out from his talk. And I hear from theists all the time, we all have, that you don't believe in God, so where are your morals at? You must be out there murdering and raping people. And I always have to seriously wonder, is that what they would be doing? Is that what they would be doing if they didn't believe in God? And when you hear somebody like Pastor Leonard say something like this, you really, really, really have to wonder, would you be out there, Pastor Leonard? Would you be out there raping if you didn't believe in God? Would you be? I kind of have a feeling that you might. And I think the only way to keep you in check is your belief in God. So please, please, please keep believing in your God. Richard, do you want to take it?
Well, I'm going to kind of go a little sideways from you, Kelly, and say that I think part of it, the problem is his belief in God. I don't know that he can do anything about it short of leaving his religion or having some major reform, since biblical Christianity is so misogynistic that he will make similar mistakes over and over again. Take, for example, 1 Timothy 2:11-14. Quote, I permit no woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She is to keep silent, end of quote. And then we have Genesis 19:6-8, where Lot takes a man into his house who's being chased by some people. They want to grab him, do whatever they want to do to him. Does he send him out? No, he sends out his 2 daughters, virgin daughters, and they get ravaged. Basically, what the Old Testament says is women are property. And so
a woman's a woman.
These people have this belief in the back of their heads, they're going to think, and so for people who think the Bible is inerrant and the Word of God and they must follow it, they are objectively misogynists, and they're going to think that doing stuff like that's okay. Onward. Dickie, where are you?
Well,
what
Richard,
do you got to say to that?
You were quoting 1 Timothy there, and I want to rewind a little bit, and I want to go to a couple of verses before what you were reading. If we look at 1 Timothy 2:9-10, right, they say, likewise also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire, but with what is proper for women who profess godliness with good works. I wonder, you're saying some people follow the Bible. I wonder if he really does believe in that, because I'm thinking that he wouldn't be voting to acquit if the woman was wearing braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire. I'm wondering if he's being biblical enough. I mean, but Infidel, you were talking about purity culture, right? And it's purity and modesty and all of that kind of balled up into one. We don't just see this in Christianity too. There's other parts of the world where throwing acid in a woman's face is okay because she was being quote unquote immodest by daring to not cover up her face with a veil in public. I mean, it's treating women as property, like we were saying. And I want to take before I pass it back off to Infidel, because I know you're chewing at the bit here, trying to get some more, but I want to look at his apology here. Okay. So he put a sign on he put an apology on the church sign. And he did say, I was wrong. I got to give him credit for that. Okay. He did say I was wrong. It wasn't a very robust or, believable, really, apology, but he did at least acknowledge that he did something wrong. I looked up on the web here, TaylorCounselingGroup.com. They say they have 5 properties of an important apology, or of a good apology. And a good apology, according to them, expresses regret. And so maybe he expressed regret here. He did say that he did something wrong. And that's the second step there, accepting responsibility. Okay. Making restitution, I think he's got a ways to go on that. Okay. I'd like to hear him talk about the way that he should have been talking about women. I want him to talk about how what he said was wrong and why is it wrong and what we should do instead. That's the third step. The fourth step, of course, is genuinely promising change. Okay, so that's kind of the a key step in an apology that's not really, it's not really brought up that often. Apology, you want to express regret, you want to say you're sorry, you want to try to make things better, but you also want to commit to making a change in the future. And I'm hearing nothing of that from Pastor, I want to say Pastor Pastor Bobby Leonard. And then, of course, the last thing is requesting forgiveness. Okay. And so you need to make amends with the population that you've harmed. And this definitely is causing harm. And so, I'd like to see a little bit more out of that. If he wants credit for being apologetic, then I think he's going to have to step up his game a little bit. Infidel, what do you think?
I think that Pastor Bobby Leonard is more concerned about being wrong for getting exposed and the negative publicity he's gotten.
Definitely.
More than it is
me. Yeah.
Yes, rather than I've actually done something wrong. And that does go back to what Richard said earlier, because at the end of the day, the Bible is extremely misogynistic. And as I had mentioned earlier, I was raised in a church where women couldn't wear pants, couldn't wear makeup, nobody could pierce their ears, couldn't even cut your hair, not even trim it. So with those types of, you could braid it.
Ooh, that's crossing the line. That's crossing the line.
I guess they were getting a little modern. They were getting a little too modern.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, it really is. It does come back to this. Women are property. Women should be silent and heard, and not heard, but they should listen and obey their husbands. You know, that's the regular routine, and that is what this guy believes. And so I don't care how many signs he puts up there. And the truth is an 80-year-old guy didn't go out there and put up the sign outside of his church. He told somebody else to. So that's just another level of having somebody else go out there and put your apology in letters in front of your church. That's even less of an apology. At least you could go out there and do it yourself. But also on the flip side, I'm going to go out and gamble. I'm going way out on a limb here and say that not a one of us here in this panel has ever sat out in the parking lot at the outlet mall and sat and watched and counted the number of people wearing shorts or skirts or pants or whatever. And if you are, and I'm not speaking to us, but if you're that type of person, my advice is go seek counseling, because there is a problem there. There is something wrong with your view of the world if you think that you need to verify and legitimize your view by, well, what were they wearing? If that ever comes up in a conversation, then you've already lost. And that is something that, for me, I can't get around. So if anyone ever thinks that, go ahead, figure something out, because the problem is not the person wearing the shorts. It's not the person who you think is wearing something too sexy for your eyes to view. The problem is right there in between your ears. If you want to look in the mirror, yes, you found the problem. It's you. So with that, Kelly?
You said it was a problem if you were out there counting. Is it okay if you're not counting?
Look, I don't have any problem with it.
I got it. I did not realize how much lustiness was exuded by braided hair. I'm like totally freaking out. I don't want to kink shame the ancient Hebrews, but I'm just freaking out on that known fact there. So one of the things I really liked about the article was the one protester that likened all the protesters to fruit inspectors. I got a chuckle out of that. I guess it was the idea that they were inspecting the pastor and he was a fruit. That means so. And I'm just thinking that was so close. I mean, you were right there. You almost had it, right? And I'm thinking, I was thinking to myself, at least the protest did one thing. If it didn't actually make him understand what he had done wrong, it at least shamed him. And I don't think that was enough. That's one of the things I wanted to ask everybody, if they thought that was enough. And if not, what is something else that Pastor Bobby can do to make up for it? I know, Scott, you kind of mentioned some things that some ways to make up for it, but what are some specific things do you think that he could do to make up for it? Richard?
Well, one of the things I wanted to respond to was the what was it, 5 or 6 points that Scott mentioned. You know what's missing in that list? Getting to the source of what caused the problem. You cannot make a change if you don't know where the problem's coming from. And that's why I talked about the Bible stuff, because that's in his head. He's got 80 years of women as property. So he's got a lot of work to do. The other thing that I thought was really interesting about him saying if he was in court, he would, about 40 years ago, I started being a lawyer. And back then, you could talk about that stuff in court. But about 10 years in, most of the courts that I know of, particularly in California and the more, sort of liberal states, you cannot mention what a woman was wearing again in a rape trial. It's not allowed. You can't go after her personally. That's irrelevant. It's prejudicial. And so that guy is way behind, even with the way he's saying he would let him get out of it, because in most courts, you wouldn't know that. It would not even be brought up. So it's just an interesting thing. And the other thing I guess I'll close up with here and send it back to the next person, Scott, is that do none of these guys that he's associated with and he's talking about have any self-discipline? I mean, they just see a woman and have to go,
Right.
Well, men are men.
Well,
Yeah,
but
men are men.
I don't have that problem.
I don't
think you
either.
guys
I don't
have it.
either.
So what's wrong with these guys?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like I don't know. It's sad. And the last thing is, if all the guys in his church believe this way, maybe the list of them should be put up on the street corner with the list of sexual predators with a sign saying "Women beware," because these guys, if you wear shorts, they're coming after you.
Yeah, I've been able to make it well over half a century, and I believe you have too. You look like you're younger than I am, Richard, but I believe you have too. And I don't think either one of us have had the desire to go assault a woman just because she was wearing shorts, right?
No, I would never do that. So, Scott.
Yeah, Kelly, you were asking about what should he do, right? How should he fix things? And I think that if you listen to what he says, and even if you read through the article, as I was reading through the article, I was like, they're not addressing the problem, right? They're not. He's blaming. He's shaming women for the way that they dress. Saying men are men, like they're just like the men are the victims here, and that's a ridiculous thing. It's just utterly ridiculous for him to say that.
Just all testosterone. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to, if he wants to have any kind of restitution or wants to show any kind of genuine intent of changing, he needs to talk to the men in his congregation and saying, no, you are the problem. It's not a question of what somebody's wearing or how they're acting. What matters is you and your self-control, okay? If you can't control yourself around other people, you're the problem. You need to, get a little bit of self-control or remove yourself from the situation, okay? And so it's they're kind of softballing it here saying, oh, we got to, this minister said something naughty. Oh no, but he did put a sign up. We need to, point things at what the problem is. And so unless I hear Pastor Bobby Leonard started talking about that kind of thing, to me, he's just falling well short of having a legitimate apology or making any kind of positive change. He even said to his congregants, he was like, he knew as soon as he said it that he struck a nerve there, because he was like, well, I know you're upset with what I said, but I'm right. And he said, I don't want you going home I don't want you to be all depressed when you go home. I want you to go home empowered. And what? Seriously? No, I'm going to go home and never come back. That's what's happening because you are part of the problem. And so unless he wants to change that, it's just all going to fall short. But I wanted to touch on a little bit of what Infidel was saying about sitting at the outlet mall. I thought that was kind of funny, but it was a little bit of funny right smack dab in the middle of a lot of creepy. And so here's the quote that was from. He said, and this is quoted from a recording of his sermon that the Charlotte Observer got. He said, I told my wife, this is the kind of preaching we need. I told my wife, Mama, when we go to Pigeon Forge to the outlet mall here and sit in the parking lot, you'll find more women going to have shorts on than pants and dresses put together. Well, first of all, yeah, like we've said, sitting at the outlet, that's your vacation time. You go to an outlet mall and you sit in the parking lot and counting people with shorts. I mean, come on. But he calls his wife Mama, and to me that just rubs me the wrong way. And I've called my wife Mom before, but usually it's like in the context of when we're having a discussion with the kids or something like that. I might be like, well, Mom and I think this, and things like that. But he was saying that he was using that as his normal reference to his wife when he was talking to his congregants. They're not in part of his family. I don't know. It just seemed kind of creepy, and it especially because it's nestled right in the middle of a big steaming pile of misogyny, right? He's dehumanizing and he's objectifying women. And at the same time, he's using phrases like, he might as well just go straight to calling her breeding vessel. I mean, why take the shortcuts here? To close out my little bit here, I do have some advice for Mrs. Bobby Leonard. And this is, I'm going to paraphrase the words of musician Glenn Danzig here. He says, Mama, tell your children not to walk his way. Tell your children not to hear his words, what they mean, what they say, Mama. And so follow that advice, Mama. Infidel?
One minute real quick.
Yeah, one thing that I want to say is I found a little irony in the fact that he ignored the fact that, and I don't agree with this scripture, but Jesus said that, if someone views a woman with lust, that he's already sinned in his heart. So does that negate the sin because they were dressed in a certain way? But I do have a suggestion on solving this problem. Now, I'm sure that more than a few of you have heard of Oedipus. Well, not the part with his mom, but the part with poking his eyes out. Maybe that's a solution for Bobby Leonard and people like him. Go ahead and poke your eyes out. And Kelly, take us away.
There's another solution that a urologist can take care of.
There you go.
Clip.
The Bobbitt solution, right? Is that what you're talking about?
No, a little lower. Eliminate the testosterone.
Right.
Well, yeah, I appreciate everybody being here. That's been a great conversation. And you, our dear viewer, you should go to tiny.cc/ACA's merch and check out some of the great merch we have there. And if you'd like to get more of the nonprofits, you can do so by clicking right here.